into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Welcome to all the Rowdies fans out there. This is James Knowles coming to you from the RBLR Rowdies section of the RBLR Sports podcast. I am here, as always, with my great co-host, Leo. Leo, you have watched two games with me this past weekend, and we've got some stuff to talk about. But first, before we even get into that, tell me how you're feeling and how it's going.
As a Rowdies fan, I'm feeling great. I mean, you and I both know that the two games before the last two, we were a little bit shaky, but now, those feelings have flushed down. They flushed away. So I'm feeling very well. And, I'm looking forward to the last regular season game. I'm looking forward to the postseason. But overall, I'm feeling very happy as a Rowdies fan. I'm, just overall very, very happy.
Yeah, that's about where I am too. The Rowdies, as you said, played two games this past week. They won against Miami FC 3-0 on Wednesday. Sorry, that's the Miami FC. That was at Al Lang. It was the last home game of the regular season, but don't worry because we have a lot coming up in the postseason. We also won on Saturday night away to Loudoun United. That was a 1-0 win. I don't think any of our predictions were correct, but we did predict a win for both games, so we'll get up point each for our efforts over these past little prediction lull that we've had.
What else is new, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's about where we have been for most of the season. So we are going to get into that in a little bit more depth. But first, I want to say, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And, we obviously do this for free, so we want to make sure at least that we get everybody who listens to tag along and check us out over the course of this season and all upcoming seasons. You can even check us out for other sports, including following for the Bucks, the Rays, and the Lightning. You can follow me specifically if you would like to. I am at RBLR James K. Where can they follow you, Leo?
Oh, yeah, you can follow me, interact with me. I'm also on Twitter at _Leo Santos __.
And if you would like to ask us any questions to bring up on our show, you can use the hashtag AskRBLR. We love getting questions, obviously, and we would love to get to those whenever you guys have them so that we can see if it's something that we missed, if it's something that we can expand upon further. Maybe it's just something that you want to hear more about than we had already gone into, and that would be great. Also, please like and subscribe to our podcasts on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, all other major podcast platforms. Wherever you are, we are also there. And finally, before we get going, please check out the t-shirt we collaborated with on Cathedral Clothing. There is a link in the description. All proceeds go to Play for More campaign, which is run by Forrest Lasso. Or chosen, I should say, by Forrest Lasso. I don't think that he's running it. He's just running our defense out there. And speaking of which, the shirt says the Rowdies are serving up clean sheets along the same font as the Krispy Kreme shirts. So now that we have all of the good stuff out of the way, we are going to get into our questions and analysis for the last two games. And the first one that we start with is Miami FC, and quite a lot of rotation that we see in the lineup. Leo, can you tell us about how this started, and then how you felt it was going for that first portion of the game?
Yeah, James, usually when we start out with the lineups for our podcast episodes, I usually start out by saying it's the usual back line, but against the Miami FC, it wasn't our usual back line. We've seen Raiko Arizarena making his debut, which, if you ask any team in towards the end of the season where you need points to, keep on climbing up the table or qualify for the playoffs, teams who put in their backup keeper might be a little bit annoyed or, question themselves like, what is the coach thinking? But if you're the Rowdies, you put in Raiko and you have the whole fan base happy and you have all the players happy. So it was a really proud moment for Raiko Arizarena to finally make his debut. And Connor Anley steps in for Jordan Scarlett in the back three. Usually we've seen him operate as a right wing back throughout the season. But this time he was part of the back three of Forrest Lasso and Aaron Guillen, and even more rotation. As we both know, Jan Ekra is still unavailable due to injury, so Jordan Doherty stepped in the midfield with Lawrence White, also giving Lewis Hilton a rest, and we've seen Leo Fernandez step in that number 10 position, something that Neil Collins has been trying lately, and it seems to be working in my opinion. And also Max Lakowecki steps on the left wing back row, and Dayon Harris, who I believe was on the pregame presser for the before the Miami FC game, he starts as the right wing back, and then up top. Yeah, Sebastian Gwenzotti, who's just firing on all cylinders. He's such a great player in such a great form right now. And Juan Tejada coming in to give some rest to Steven Dos Santos, and he also had a big game. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But yeah, that's basically how they lined up. A lot of rotation, a lot of players that usually on the bench finally get their chance, towards the end of the season to make one last impression on Neil Collins to, make himself wonder if he should start these players or not come playoff time. But that's how the team looked like heading into, against Miami FC. And for this game, it was a very dominant display from the Rowdies, and I feel like it had to be. You were a little shaky in your past two games. You lose to Pittsburgh Riverhounds away with the rotated squad. Okay, that's fine. You get a pass on that. But you tie against New York Red Bulls 2 at home with, the kind of squad that we've seen throughout the season where the Rowdies pick up the most points, where they're playing very great soccer, and you only tie 1-1. So I feel like this was the Rowdies were, they needed to show their fans in their last home game of the regular season a dominant display. And that's exactly what we got from the Rowdies. It was a perfect way to wrap up the final home game of the season. And one thing that really stepped up to me really, really early on was the high press from the Rowdies, James. It was just incredible. They wouldn't let the Miami FC's back line, their midfield, take a second to breathe or relax on the ball. And we've seen how Leo Fernandez just had constant pressure as the number 10, taking the ball away from the Miami FC defender, and he's through on goal, decides to be unselfish and give it to Sebastian Gwenzotti. And with the form he's in, just comfortably puts it away very early on in the opening 2 or 3 minutes. And the Rowdies, they got the perfect start and the perfect way to, to really set themselves up for this game.
Yeah, I think everything that you just said is, very important to the opening stages of this game that we played against Miami. And if you, or if I check my notes, I should say, the first thing that I have obviously is the lineup and the notation that we rotated so much. But the very second thing that I have after the lineup itself is that we were just pressing very high from the start, and especially from Juan Tejada and Leo Fernandez, as you noted as well. Leo Fernandez was very central in this game, and he seemed to be, making the most of his ability to both defend and then when he actually does win the ball, turn that into attack. And, 3 minutes in, we already get the first goal here because off of that pressing. And, it was just so impressive to see them turn that into not only, a lot of scoring chances like they had, but one that they ultimately put in the back of the net. Obviously, that's what we all want to see as fans, is you want to see your team score so that they can actually try to go and win the game. But with the way that the Rowdies were pressing, it looked at least very early on like Miami weren't even going to have that many chances because they couldn't get the ball out of their own half. I think that, to start this game with the rotation that they put out there, it's my opinion, and I don't know this for certain. I can't obviously tell what was going through Neil Collins' head, and he likes to keep things close to the chest, something that we have noted over the course of this season over our Zoom press conferences with the Rowdies. But, I think that when he goes out there and the Miami lineup, they see what our lineup is and they see that there's a lot of rotation. They're like, okay, this is mostly what you would say the reserve team for the Rowdies, even back to the goalkeeper, Raiko Rosarena, who is, as you noted, making his debut. It's kind of, okay, these guys might be a little shaky. This is their first action of the season. And I think that kind of played into the Rowdies' hands here, because when Neil Collins tells this team, okay, now that I'm putting you guys out there and a lot of you are starting games that you might not. A lot of you are starting in positions that you might not usually do that. We need to put them under all the pressure that you can muster for the first 10 minutes. And the Rowdies absolutely came out on fire. I think, like I said, that it was kind of lulling them into this false sense of security with the rotated lineup and then absolutely hammering them as much as they could in the first couple minutes. And it paid off big time, as we have both noted, with their goal and a couple of other chances that had already come along before and then after that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. You just touched on everything that, we both agree on. And like I said, moving forward, we kind of seen the same of what the Rowdies wanted to do. When the opposition has the ball, just pressure. When you have the ball, make the most of it. And we've seen one thing I noticed here is that although center mids usually stay in the center of the field, But in this game, I seen a lot of Jordan Doherty and Lawrence White making runs on the outside. Going out wide. Leo Fernandez, occupying that in the that number 10 role where he will also make runs out wide. So you're really stretching out this Miami back line where they're thinking they're guarding either Max Lakowecki or Dayon Harris. Those outside fullbacks are thinking about guarding those players. But when you bring in another, players on your side, you're like, okay, who do I choose? Who should I guard? Who do I think is the less threat? And when this 2v1 on the sides, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna get beat. No matter how much of a good defender you are, it's just 2v1. The odds are never in your favor, should I say? And then with those 2 goals, that's really how they came upon. So when you have two players, attacking a right back or a left back, that then attracts a center back to come help out that defender. And then you leave some, space available for any attacker to pull in. And that's when we've seen Juan Tejada, when he gets a ball coming in, he obviously the ball is kind of behind him. But he does, make the most to keep it in play by giving it to Lawrence White. And then he just puts in a beautiful cross. And I think the header from Sebastian Gwenzotti is even more beautiful because, he made it look easy, but he was a good distance away from the goal. The ball didn't really have too much power to it. Yeah, the ball from Lawrence White didn't really have enough power to it. So Gwenzotti had to really generate that power to put it behind the goalkeeper and also put it away to a spot where he wouldn't reach. And in my opinion, I think the Miami FC goalkeeper, he's actually a decent goalkeeper, not someone who lets in easy goals to him. So for Seba Gwenzotti to do that, it was really impressive. But I think what's even more impressive, as I said, is that Lawrence White was just always down on the left side or on the right side, and we've seen the same with Leo Fernandez and Jordan Doherty. They weren't just staying in the center, not limiting themselves to a certain role. They just kept on going out wide, really spreading the defense and making opportunities for Tejada, Gwenzotti, and when Dos Santos eventually came in, making room for him. And then when he came in, he also scored a goal. But that's because it came in from another cross out wide from Lawrence White, this time on the left side. And, something we've seen familiar where Gwenzotti headers it, but instead of on goal, he, gives it back to his striker, to his, his fellow striker, Dos Santos, to smash that goal into the back of the net. And it was just really impressive the way they would press. And also when they got the ball, I really gotta give credit to Neil Collins for being creative on really expanding the game, I would say, because we talk about how wide, how Rowdies like to play this side-to-side kind of soccer, but this time they were really playing, they took the side-to-side soccer to a whole nother level by providing even more options down the flanks, so it wasn't 1v1, it was more like 2v1, 3v1s, and then you have more than 2 players inside the box, so 9 times out of 10 you're gonna create chances in that 6-yard box as long as you keep on putting crosses in the box. And as we've seen with those 2 goals in the second half, I was just really impressed with the way the Rowdies played this game, and I think it's a game that the fans really did deserve to watch and to have for their last home game of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it mostly comes down to the way that the Rowdies set the tone for the game. And that started off, like we said, in the first 10 minutes there, when they kind of showed Miami that, even if this team is the second team for what the Rowdies roster is, they still have a lot of good players and they can still do a lot of tough things for opponents. So I think that that shows, one thing that Neil Collins would have loved to have seen is a dominant performance from this side, because not only does that mean that he's obviously got a very good first team, if you want to break it up into a first and second team, but it means that he's also got a lot of players that he can have confidence in that don't usually start. And if somebody goes out, if he has to start somebody who doesn't usually go out there from the beginning, then, we can still plug that gap and we can still play extremely well, or we can change things up even a little bit and then still have a really good game plan. I think that is something that you would really love to see as a coach. And, the high pressing and the hard running from the beginning is part and parcel of the Rowdies' usual style anyway. So all of that bodes very well for the team overall. And I think in addition to that, there is one thing to note about the first half before we get a little farther into the goals that you were talking about, Leo, from the second half. The Rowdies did seem to slow up a little bit, and I think that's understandable, as much as, players need to be fit enough to run a full 90 minutes. Obviously, there are very few people in the world even who can run at the pace that they were going in the first 10 minutes over a whole games period. So I think that, when the Rowdies did slow down, it ultimately came, maybe halfway through the first half, I would say. I had my notes up until the 16th minute that Miami still seemed to be shell-shocked out there and they really couldn't get a handle on the ball or anything. Ultimately, they did start to win the battle for possession a little bit more, and they had created a couple more chances. But I think it should be noted that Forrest Lasso was playing absolutely massively at the back. He was getting out for every header. He was getting in the way of all these shots. He was so good at the back in terms of putting his body on the line. And, he wasn't the only one as well. Antley was doing very well to win long balls. And Aaron Guillen was having a very good battle against Cristiano Francois, which was the Miami winger on the right wing. And then every time that they had him out on the right wing, or on our left wing, obviously, it was the case that I think the Rowdies expected him to be the danger man. So they were doubling up on him frequently. And when they did that, Francois didn't usually have too many other options to pass the ball to. So I think that everything was really executed to a very good level. They did the high pressing. As they slowed down, they were still able to defend extremely well, and they were able to plug the gaps where, gaps might arise because there is a good player here or there is a player who can control the game there. I think something that we have highlighted for Miami in the past is that Ariel Martinez is a very good player in the middle of the field, and he does a very good job of setting up other players to have good chances if he's not the one taking good shots himself. I don't think they said his name at all during the first half.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, if they did, I missed it. And that just speaks to how good the Rowdies were doing in that job of, making sure that Miami was stifled and they didn't really have anything to go by. So yeah, you have to look at everything from the first half, and you just have to, almost sit back and just take your hat off to the team because they did so well. And then obviously when we get into the second half, the Rowdies do bring on some substitutions, and they get back into the rhythm that they wanted to get into instead of allowing Miami to have their possession. And that allowed us to get those two goals that you had mentioned already, where Seba just shows how smart he is, and Steven Dos Santos also, he shows how acrobatic he can be with that half volley. I really liked watching both of these goals, and I think the build up to both of them is something that Neil Collins again will sit back and watch and go like, wow, this is a great team that I've built. And I would tend to agree.
Yeah, and just to build up on everything you just said, I think in the bigger picture, this shows how difficult it will be for teams that are heading into the playoffs to beat the Rowdies at Ao Ling, because that atmosphere was for a Wednesday night game. I really did enjoy the home atmosphere on the broadcast. I feel like it was lively, but also I just think, when the Rowdies are at home, and this probably goes for any team, when you're at home, you get that extra motivation because you're not only playing for your teammates, but you're playing for the fans, those people that paid tickets to come watch you, those people that paid extra to get closer seats to admire, the product on the field, and you're the product on the field that's being watched. So that gives you extra motivation as well. And we got to remember that Miami is not only a rivalry team. This isn't just a rivalry game between Tampa and Miami. It's also, Miami is also a team that will be in the playoffs come next month. They're going to be a team that, if they lose, they go out. If they win, they move on, and they could possibly play the Rowdies again. But they're a team that qualified for the playoffs, and they're also a team trying to get higher. They're trying to get a higher spot in the top four in regards in the Atlantic Division. So they'll probably get a quote unquote easier opponent, and when the playoffs do come around. So this game, although Rowdies already clinched the first place in the Eastern Conference, this game did mean something to Miami, and I'm pretty sure it meant something very much as well to the Rowdies. So like I said, the bigger picture to me is that, from what I took from this game, is that it's going to be hard for teams who are in the playoffs to come to Ao Ling and get a result against the Rowdies, no matter how they play, because we see, man, we could high press teams, and if teams want to sit back, Rowdies found ways to overcome challenges like that too during this form that they're in right now. So that's what I would take away mainly from this game, is that basically good luck to teams that come to Ao Ling during the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything that you just said is spot on for, what we've seen over the course of not only this season, but last season, that the Rowdies just know how to win when they're at home. For the most part, they will, hold teams off from getting cheap goals, and they will also put themselves in good positions to score throughout almost all games. And, there are some slip-ups. We'll get to something that you might classify as a slip-up in the next game here, but this was certainly a very dominant performance from the Rowdies overall. And despite, a little bit of a chippy nature throughout the game, I think that Miami were getting frustrated that they were having so little of the ball and so few chances. But, the Rowdies kept their heads, and they ultimately didn't do anything, that put themselves in a bad position for the rest of the game. So I like that, and I like everything else that we had mentioned previously. I think, Leo, do you have anything else to say before we do the man of the match and go to the Loudoun game?
Oh no, I think we covered everything. You mentioned it for me because I forgot, but there was a little tension in the game where we seen a little bit of push and shoving and some frustrations from the Miami FC. But that's kind of typical stuff you see during a rivalry game. But besides that, I think we hit everything spot on.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the man of the match then, and I will go first if you don't mind, Leo, because I have a name here that he might not have actually contributed overall to the win as much as anybody else, but I think that he still is very deserving of this.
All right, yeah, go ahead. You go first, James.
All right, so my man of the match, making his debut for the Rowdies, is Rico Arozarena. And I want to explain it a little bit more because, as I have said, there are players out there who probably did a little bit more than Rico over the course of the game. But I think that coming into your first game at the USL Championship level, it can be pretty daunting. Miami is not a bad team, and they have players who are capable of changing the game in a second with shots from far out or chances that are created out of nothing. But Rico Arozarena really showed himself to be an incredibly confident player out there. What I am thinking for the future is, Evan Loro is obviously a very good goalkeeper. And as Rowdies fans, we would love to see him stay for, 10 years or so. But is that as realistic? Maybe not. What are we going to do if it ultimately comes down that an MLS team or maybe even a team from, let's say, Liga MX in Mexico or somewhere in Europe calls over and says, hey, Evan Loro is a very good goalkeeper. We would like to bring him in as a backup or even as a starter, depending on where it is. What's going to happen after that? Well, I think Rico Arozarena would be able to step in and fill that position very easily. As I said, he showed himself to be incredibly confident when he came out there to get the ball. I thought that, there were a couple of instances out there he had some time to kill before he could actually pick up the ball. And every time that happened, he did it. He stood around and he pretended like he was going to pick it up a couple of times, and then he didn't. It was very funny to see while the Miami players were already getting heated. And then the other thing that I noted from Rico Arozarena, I don't know if this is something that you picked up on, Leo, but that kid can kick a ball so hard and so far. If we go back to the second goal, it actually came off of a Rico Arozarena clearance. He kicked it it was like a bullet straight to Sebastian Gwenzotti's header. Sebastian Gwenzotti was on the last defender, and he had to get his head on the ball to stop it so that it wouldn't go farther. And then it fell, obviously, down to Lawrence White, who played it out to Max Lakawecki. A couple more touches through to Hada and Antley, and it gets crossed back into Seba, who put in that wonderful header that Leo had already told us about. But it all started actually with Rico Arozarena's clearance, and it wasn't the first time over the course of the game that happened. Now, there was a higher wind in the second half than there was in the first half. It seemed like conditions did get a little bit more choppy with the weather specifically, but I think Rico Arozarena was doing that all on his own. He can absolutely belt a ball, and I was so happy that he had such a good game. And it should be noted in front of his brother Randy Arozarena, who was at the game to watch it. That was really cool to see. So for all of those reasons, Rico Arozarena will be my man of the match, despite everyone else. And now, Leo, I will let you go through your choice.
Thank you, James. I really agree with everything you just said. And when I seen that pictures from the Rowdies social media page of Rico and his brother taking a picture after the game, I feel like that's a moment that every single Rowdies fan loves to see. So, once again, congratulations to Rico for making his debut. But my man of the match, I remember one episode where James, I took the easy way out and voted Sebastian Gwenzotti because he had 2 goals and an assist. And there was another game where he did the same thing, but I believe he chose Lawrence White instead of Sebastian Gwenzotti. So instead of choosing Sebastian Gwenzotti for this one, I'm going to go with Juan Tejada because ever since he came back from injury, I don't know if you agree with me on this, James, but I feel like he hasn't really looked the same Juan Tejada that we've seen him play before in the Rowdies uniform. From the first time he was signed to play with this team at a very young age, and he's still a fairly young player, but he just hasn't looked the same. He's been off. To me, he's looked like he's been off in regards to his pace, to his dribbling, and really just like go getting to that kind of form where we know he's capable of playing for the Rowdies. But this game against Miami FC, it's a game against a team that, like I said, will be in the playoffs. It's a game against a rivalry team. It's your last home game outlaying in the regular season, and to me, it looked like he showed up. He showed up a lot in this game. He wasn't giving credit for the assist, but the way he kept that play alive and the second goal was really impressive. And throughout the game, I was really impressed with his decision making, his positioning, really that never say die attitude he had in this game, where if a ball's behind him, he's still gonna make the most to keep the play going. If a ball's in front of him, he's gonna thinking, okay, what's the best option from here? I think all that's missing from Tejada, at least at this point of the season, is a goal. And I don't know if that'll come. I hope it does. And I feel like it'll be a very special moment for him, for a young player, a young player in the local area, from the Tampa Bay area. So I think, yeah, for those reasons, that's why he's my man of the match. And I feel like I was just really happy to see him because it looked like to me he was enjoying playing, not only playing for the Rowdies, but just playing soccer in general, this game against the Miami FC.
Yeah, he definitely did get back to, I think, the Juan Tejada that we all love to see. And I got to agree with everything you said about him. He did seem to have that love for life when he was back out there. And I really like seeing that from every player, and definitely from a player as fun to watch as Juan Tejada. So, yeah, I think that's a very good choice as well.
Exactly.
So that will take us then through this game and into the Loudoun United game. Loudoun was on Saturday. We were away, and it was not as good in terms of the quality for what the Rowdies showed out there on the field. I think some conditions were different, including the fact that they were playing on turf, and turf is never as easy as playing on grass. Obviously, I think that most players would tell you that, but for the conditions that they were under, and for the game that it was, which is essentially away to a team that, well, let's be honest, they're bottom of the table. They're really not looking that good. The Rowdies just kind of went out there, and I think they were really just professional, kind of making sure that everything was taken care of, and they weren't giving up any cheap chances. What did you see out there?
What I seen was a little bit more of what you're saying. He kind of took the safe and professional route, and by that I mean, you're saying like a casual performance from the Rowdies. I'm just saying that like they really approached this game in a fundamental way. So when they were defending, everyone was guarding their man, no silly mistakes, no trying to do too much. Just focus on your man, apply that pressure, but don't necessarily dive in. And when you have the ball, try to make the most of it. Pass the ball around. Look for open space, looking for runs behind the back line. And to me, it's really what it looked like. I feel like the Rowdies had to be patient. I'm pretty sure Neil could have developed a plan for, the Rowdies to totally destroy the team that's in the bottom of the division, bottom of the Eastern Conference, and bottom of the USL in general. I feel like there could have been a way to tear this team apart. But going away, and like I said, playing on a turf field isn't easy. So I think the Rowdies did approach this game in a safe way. At least that's from what I seen. There were chances for the Rowdies to score, more than just one goal. I remember watching the game, and I think it's Dos Santos who sets up Jordan Doherty perfectly, on a one-time hit.
Very early on, yeah.
Yeah, very early on, yeah. And Jordan Doherty barely misses that chance, just wide off to the left side of the goal. And, from my view, it looked like they went in. I was, almost close to cheering already, but obviously it didn't go in. But I thought, okay, very early on, we get a chance like this, we're going to get another one, and another one, and another one. We might get at least 2, 3, 4 goals. But Loudoun, they looked like, in my opinion, the better of both sides early on in regards to possession, and, the team that would look like the dominant team, but I feel like throughout the game it was turning towards the Rowdies' favor. And when they did get that goal off of the set piece, which I remember hearing the commentators for the game saying, if you're Loudoun United, you should not concede a penalty, you should not concede a foul within that area if Lewis Hilton is on the field for the Rowdies. And, they paid for it because we've seen throughout the season, James, where you and I just admire Lewis Hilton's ability on set pieces. The beautiful ball he puts in dangerous areas, and, countless times Rowdies have scored off of those crosses, and he did it once again, off a free kick. Puts it in a dangerous area, goes to everybody. I can't remember from the replay, but I'm not sure if it rebounded off a Loudoun United player or Forrest Lasso before Dos Santos hit it in. I'm pretty sure it was a Loudoun United player, and then Dos Santos hits it in. But basically, when you give basically Rowdies opportunities like that to score and the kind of form they're in and the kind of technique that Lewis Hilton has, delivering on set pieces, you just basically are asking to get scored on from this Rowdies team. And then after that, Rowdies just kept it safe, kept it professional, not really taking risk of killing the game out. They decided to play it safe and, sit back, possess the ball whenever you can, play very, very basic soccer. And that was enough really to take this Rowdies team to get all 3 points.
Yeah, I think that, the goal here was just to get out with the 3 points and maybe not overburden yourself, let's say, because playing on turf, you could possibly open yourself up to more injuries, or it's just, getting close to the playoffs. You don't want to have anybody injured when you get this far into the season. I understand that. Obviously that's a smart move. I think that we were all pretty surprised by the rotation in the game against Miami because it was a home game and it was against a rival. Here I would have expected more rotation, but the points are still crucial. You got to put out the players who can close out a game, even if you might not be going, let's say 110%, as we thought the game against Miami was. But I do have to note, I predicted a 2-0 scoreline here, and Leo, I feel a little bit gypped after this game because it was 1-0 going into stoppage time, and I don't know what happened, but I was almost about to say Jermaine Forta, the Loudoun United goalkeeper, deserved the man of the match because that series of saves he made in the last couple, I think it was 90th plus 3 or 4 minutes.
It was very, very late on.
He made 4 stops and then 3 or 4 saves, and then there were twice that they hit the post, I think it was, all in the same play. I just couldn't believe that the ball didn't end up in the back of the net there.
I remember watching that, James. The first thing I thought of like something that happens on FIFA, something that also happens at someone's Sunday League games. I play in Sunday League and I see that stuff all the time, and I'm just thinking, am I watching the USL? Am I watching the Sunday League games that just happen to be televised on ESPN Plus? But you mentioned that Jermaine Fordoff, the goalie for the Loudoun United, he made, as I say, about 2 goal line saves, and the ball just hitting the post. Every single Rowdies player, he could put the whole starting 11 team on there taking a shot from that close very late on, and it still wouldn't go in. And I was just waiting for that ball to go in. The commentators were saying, "Oh, here goes this one. Oh, here goes this one. Oh, here goes this one. Oh, safe from the goalie. Oh, safe from the goalie." It was like, what is going on? Why couldn't the ball just get in the back of the net? And I guess it, just wasn't written in the stars for the Rowdies to get a second goal, no matter how easy it was set up for them to get that second goal. Especially Gwenzotti takes the first hit at it, doesn't go in, and I believe it's Lawrence Wyke, or it might have been Lawrence Wyke or someone else. They get a hit on it, and then the goalie makes another save after making that first initial save, and it was really crazy, James. And I do think you've gotten robbed from predicting the right score line, but hey, at least we predicted the result.
Yes, exactly. There is one more thing that I wanted to note specifically in relation to the players for this game. It was said on the broadcast that Forrest Lasso and Lewis Hilton were both 1 yellow card away from a suspension. So if we look at the games left, obviously, after the Loudoun United game, there's just this final game of the season away to Las Vegas. And that team, for anyone who is unaware, is not a particularly good team this season. They have had a very poor set of results, and they have had a comparatively poor roster playing for them. And, no knock against those guys. Obviously, most of them are youth players, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But it is something to be said when the last game is essentially maybe not a dead rubber game. You don't want to drop points, obviously, but it's probably as close to that as any coach would be willing to call it a dead rubber game. So if you're going to get a yellow, it might have been the game game to do it against Loudoun, and then see, if afterwards you miss the Las Vegas game, and there's no chance that you're going to have to worry about getting any problems with suspensions as the next game happens. Now, I don't believe that Forrest Lasso did get a yellow, but Lewis Hilton actually did in the 71st minute. Ultimately, he got it for talking back to the referee, and you kind of hate to see that, because it's a little bit silly to get a yellow card for talking back to the referee. But in the end, him getting a yellow does mean that he's suspended specifically for the Las Vegas game, and then I believe after that the slate should be wiped clean for him for the playoffs. So I honestly don't mind that he got a yellow for this game, just in terms of the strategic evaluation of which games are more important. You obviously want to be present for the games in the playoffs, as opposed to a game against what is an MLS team's reserve team, not doing very well, all of that stuff. I gotta say, for a silly yellow card, I will take that one.
Yeah. And on that note, if I'm being totally honest, and this might sound cruel, but if I was Forrest Lasso, I would find a way to get a yellow card as well, just to.
I was kind of thinking that.
Exactly, yeah, just to get rid of that suspension. Because if you miss out against the Las Vegas Lights game, and like you said, all respect to Las Vegas Lights, they are at the end of the day reserve team for the MLS side. You really tested out putting Connor Antley, Max like awake in the back three, and they did a fine job in my opinion. So. But we know Forrest Lasso isn't that kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that loves playing, loves leading that back line. So, hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully nothing happens against Las Vegas Lights. And it's usually, from what I learned in soccer, the upsets tend to come at the most, I would say, least expected moments, but also the upsets tend to come at a time you very much not want them to come. So whether that means, I'm not necessarily saying a loss, but whether that means a way in which Las Vegas Lights plays to try to trigger Forrest Lasso or someone else getting suspended, that could also be an upset in that way. But hopefully it doesn't go down that route. And but yeah, like we said, James, just something to keep an eye on for people listening and for Rowdies fans.
Absolutely. So that will take us through the Loudoun game, and then we're going to do our man of the match before we move into a couple more questions here related to the two games in comparison to each other. So my man of the match for this past game against the Loudoun United team that we expected them to beat, obviously, and they ultimately did get the 3 points. I think if it's not going to be Jermaine Forda, then the player who I would say is man of the match is Lewis Hilton. I think that not only did he, provide the setup for the goal with that great free kick, as we all know he can do, he also created the most chances in the game that ultimately turned out to be 3. He had 4 shots, and his pass success rate was 89%. You get a little bit farther down in the statistics, and you see some, you see some good stuff there too on the defensive side, and that includes 3 duels won. That includes 9 recoveries as well, and then 1 tackle succeeded. So I think that all of that together, for me, he would be the man of the match. And Leo, who would be your man of the match for this game?
I'm gonna have to go with Lewis Hilton as well. I feel like he was the one that impressed me the most, and I said a little bit earlier how on set pieces he's just dangerous, and not only on set pieces, when he has the ball anywhere on the field, you just feel like he's gonna pick that right long ball to break the defense. He's gonna pick that right slick ball to let a Leo Fernandez or a Connor Antley or Sebastian Daugard in on goal to play another pass for one of the strikers to feed on. But we've seen throughout this game just how hard he works. And James, you and I use a term, describing Lewis Hilton as a bulldog, and rightfully so. He just does not stop running. He always gives his all every single game, and if it costs him a yellow card, then so be it. After all, he was the one that did assist the goal for the Rowdies to get all 3 points for this game. But for all those reasons and the reasons you mentioned, I have to go with Lewis Hilton.
All right. Well, that is pretty open and shut then, and that will take us into our last 2 questions here. Leo, for you, I want to ask, based on the past 2 games, are we convinced that the Rowdies are back to their best again?
I would say yes. I was a little bit worried the last 2 games, specifically against that New York Red Bulls 2 side, because you did put in a strong side and you only get a point at home. Then, you're playing against a better side like the Miami FC, and you absolutely demolished them 3-0, and you just played probably one of the best soccer games the Rowdies have displayed in quite some time. And then you go to Loudoun United, and yeah, and like I said, there could have been a game plan where you absolutely just tear apart Loudoun United, but instead you play it safe and you show that you can approach a game in a professional manner, or in a you can approach a game where you just do the fundamentals, defend solid, and also attack and score whenever you can, whether that's set pieces or through balls. And they did both of those things. They're providing ways that they can beat opponents. For those reasons, I think that I am convinced that the Rowdies are back to their best again. And another thing, James, that we haven't said it in quite some time, they're finally keeping clean sheets again. So for all those reasons, I'm convinced that at the right time, the Rowdies are back to their best.
We will have one more match to analyze before we get to the playoffs, so hopefully they continue that trend. The last question that I have here before we go into our hot takes, though, is which rotational players who started the last two games have the best chance to start a game in the playoffs? And I've seen what you intend to go over here. I got to be honest, everything that you said already, I agree with. I think that mostly I am thinking about, the injury to Jan Ekra and where that leaves us moving into the playoffs if he is still out. So, yeah, please take it away and tell us what you think.
Yeah, for this question, I'm going with Connor Antley. He showed how he could play more than one role. Throughout the season, we've seen him operate as a right wing back, and that's the only position we've seen him operate as. I believe it was against it was the Miami FC where he operated as one of the back three, and he did really well in that role as well too. Using his pace as an advantage to keep up with opposing attackers, and also quickly transition to play in favor of the Rowdies. And also when he operates as a right wing back, he offers you pace. He offers you, a trickery when he has the ball, and it can also spread out defenders and also get into open space very, very quickly. So, I was really impressed with how he played these past two games. And you and I, James, both mentioned already. If not, well, we're going to mention it for the first time. But Jan Ekra is still injured, And last time I checked with Neo, there wasn't really no exact date for his return. And as we've seen in the past games, Leo Fernandez has operated as a number 10, as a number 10 role, and also going left and right, as we've seen with Jan Ekra did before he suffered an injury. So it looks like, Antley will come in on the right wing back position, and Sebastian Dalgard, who's been, in good form right now, will go on the left side where he's, he operated as sometimes throughout the season. So, I would say Dayon Harris, I thought he did good, but just looking at Connor Antley's past two games, it kind of looks like he deserves it a little bit more. It looks like he's more of a reliable. You know what you're gonna get when you have Connor Antley on the field. You feel like he has a better understanding playing with these players, and that might be because he has more playing time with these players. So with all those reasons, I think Connor Antley will be one of those quote unquote rotational players to start have the best chance to start a game when the playoffs come around.
I like that. And the other thing that I would say really quickly about Connor Antley is when he did play that defensive role in the back three alongside Forrest Lasso, and I believe it was Aaron Guillen for the Miami game, I asked Neil Collins about the rotation and a couple of players within that game. He noted specifically that Connor Antley was actually brought in to play that role as opposed to the right wing back role. So that's something to note for him. He can play in the center defensive role, and he is so good at playing outside that they've actually decided that he can go out there and do that at a very high level over the course of this season. So I think that that's all very positive for him and does bode well for his ability to get on the field. That will do it for our hot take, before we get into our hot takes. And Leo, you have one here that is very interesting. And it's something that I would like to see, but you gotta convince me of it here.
So I'm gonna operate as a salesman. I'm trying to sell you my pitch, okay?
All right.
For this hot take, I just seen how difficult it is for quite some time for teams to come to Outlang and get a result. So therefore, I'm saying as long as the Rowdies don't play an away game in the postseason, and as you and I, James, both know that they will play at least until the championship. All the games will be at home because it did clinch that number one. seed in the Eastern Conference, and they're very close to clinching number one spot overall in the USL. But as of right now, they will play home games in the postseason, and as long as we play at home, I really do believe that we won't lose a game. Because when you're in the playoffs and it's a weekend, fans are out of work, they have time to make plans, they're gonna come, they're gonna invite more people, more news outlets are gonna gain attention to the Rowdies because they're in the playoffs, and we already know how big the Saint Tampa Bay is here, so it's gonna try to get more people in the stadiums. And when you have almost a full crowd at Outlang, that noise gets really loud. That gives you extra motivation, as I talked earlier about in this episode. About that extra confidence it gives to players, and they're definitely not going to want to disappoint. And that's just going to give them that extra advantage over teams that do come to Outlang. So for all those reasons I just mentioned, I just don't see the Rowdies losing in the postseason as long as they keep on playing at Outlang.
I do like all of the logic that you put into that. It's not just something that we say out there. Just throw out there to see where it lands. So I am definitely feeling a lot more convinced than when I just read it. I like that. Mine is not quite so hot as that. It is just something that, I am going to the final game of the regular season out in Las Vegas, and everybody likes to think of Las Vegas as a party area, rightly or wrongly. I'm sure for a lot of people it is that, but I think for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, obviously, as much as, it will be the last game of the season, it will be a game that, it's easy to take your eyes off the ball, so to speak, in this non-metaphorical way. Here, the Rowdies have to be absolutely all business, and they don't necessarily need to take all 3 points. We're going to get into that in our preview, but getting all 3 points against a team like Las Vegas Lights, really, it is a must. So yeah, I just want to see the team continue to stay on that grind, as everybody likes to say, and make sure that they maintain that all business stance, nothing casual. We're going to go out there and win this game. So that will take us into the standings. And Leo, if you want to go through that, we can get started on the preview afterwards that I have been hinting at.
Yeah, okay. Definitely. So, final regular season game is on Saturday at 10 p.m. for Las Vegas. And James, tell us a little bit about that game.
Yeah, for this game, I will be able to go there. Like I said, this is going to be very fun for me. I have not been to an away game for the Rowdies. So I'm going to see, what it's like to actually go out there and rep the team in a different city, and hopefully with a couple of other people from the supporters groups. I know that they said they are going. They will, we're trying to organize and make sure that everybody's sitting in the same place. Obviously, I think that all the seats for the Rowdy supporters come from the same section. The game against Loudoun United, I did see one Rowdies fan behind the net, so that was really cool. Hopefully there will be a couple more in this one, and I will actually get to be one of them. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I just want to say, you, my friend James, you better have the best of times, because, as you said, Las Vegas is a party city, as you mentioned, and I hope you have a great time. But speaking of the Las Vegas Lights team, they are in the bottom of the group with 21 points from 31 games. And another thing to know is that they only have one win in their last 16 games. So this is a perfect opportunity for the Rowdies to wrap up the regular season on a high note. Fixed team that only has one win in their last 16 games. You don't want to be that team that gives them their second win in their last 17 games, because that just doesn't put a good morale around your team when you lose to a team like that. And as you have here, James, that this is LAFC's second team, and they're led by, if I'm correct, this is a former U.S. men's national team player, Steve Sharundaloo. Am I right?
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And James, do you have any players you'd like to mention for the Las Vegas Lights?
So, yeah, there are a couple of players that I would like to cover really quickly now. As we mentioned, this is the second team for MLS side, LAFC, Las Vegas is obviously. And, through that partnership, they do have a couple of good players that come from the LAFC youth team, or players who are on loan from MLS. So similar to when we play the New York Red Bulls, that's kind of the way you got to look at it here. There might be a lot of young guys out there, but there might actually also be some guys who are on loan from MLS team. And if they are, then obviously they're going to be pretty good players, because to get to that level, you generally have to be. If we look at some of the players who might be out there, there are two Senegalese defenders who are on loan every so often from LAFC. One of them is Mohamed Triore. He is a very good player from the Montverde Academy, actually in the middle of Florida. And I like, what I've seen from him, which is not too much, to be fair, but I have seen some good stuff when he is available, at least on my TV. And then the other is Mamadou Fall. He is a player who has played more for LAFC since his move to the West Coast. And I think that it's unlikely that we'll see him. But if he does go out there, then, they're going to have a very good back line, and we need to keep that in mind. Additionally, they do have a good goalkeeper in Alex Rando. He is a former youth player for the New York City FC team. That is the MLS affiliate of the Manchester City ownership group. And he left college early to come and play at this level. And obviously, he's trying to play for a team at the MLS level ultimately later in his career. So he's somebody to keep an eye on. Another guy to keep an eye on is a player from Atlanta, Georgia, Cal Jennings. He originally went to college at UCF, so there is that little rivalry. But when he went professional, he was drafted and then not signed by an MLS team. So he ended up playing in the USL Championship level originally for Memphis. And when that season was over, he'd done so well, he earned a contract with LAFC and MLS. He hasn't played a ton for them because they do have a lot of good players, like a Colombian national team player, Carlos Vela, a Mexican national team player. No, these are very high-level guys. So if he's not getting on the field too much, they loan him out to Las Vegas Lights. And in this time, he has scored 11 goals in 19 games. So he's somebody that we definitely need to keep an eye on, especially when he gets in the box. He is very good at putting himself in positions where he is able to score. And we've seen that at every level that he's played over the course of his career. There are a couple of other players who might come on loan from LAFC down to the Las Vegas team for this game. We're just going to have to see how it plays out. One of them is Bryce Duke, a young player from Arizona. One of them is Kwadwo Opoku, who is a striker from Ghana, another young guy. And, there are a couple of other defenders as well, Eric Duenas, Tony Leone, and another striker, I would say, is Danny Masovsky. These are all guys that we might need to keep an eye on. But the issue with predicting who will or won't be out there, as I said, is that, this team has some loanees every game, and then sometimes they go back and they play with LAFC. You can't really tell who's going to be available when, because LA and Las Vegas, I looked it up before the trip, are about 4 hours apart. So it's not too hard to get players from one team to the next. And that's what we'll be dealing with out on the field. Hopefully we'll have a good idea when the lineups are actually announced of what team we're dealing with. And that should take us into the predictions, and then we will go through the final standings and our one more thing section. Do you want to go first on your prediction, Leo? I know that last week we went back and forth for games, but I wanted to see what you would think for this one.
Yeah, I'll take the first hit at it. So I'm going with it. Las Vegas is not the best teams, as you mentioned, and we never know what we're gonna get in regards to who will play and who will not play for this Las Vegas team. But I'm expecting a team from the Rowdies that might not be the strongest, but strong enough to win at least 3-0 on the road against Las Vegas Lights.
3-0 was going to be the score that I chose, so you were right to go first. And if you are going to take the 3-0, I have said in the last couple of episodes that I do want this game as well to stay a clean sheet. So I will have to go with the 2-0 win for this one. That's my prediction. And we are going to go really quickly through the standings here. The Rowdies are top of the division, top of the East, top of the league. We are top of everything here with 68 points from 31 games. If you look below us, Charlotte has actually overtaken Pittsburgh. They have 55 points from 30 games, and Pittsburgh have 54 points from 30 games. Right below them, Miami round out the playoff positions with 51 points from 30 games as well. Birmingham lead the Central Division. They have 60 points from 31 games. Louisville are actually behind them still. They have 58 points from 31 games. So they are 10 points behind us. That doesn't necessarily mean that Louisville are worse, but I think it bodes well for us, and I like the way that is paying out. If you look at the other side, the Western Conference, then you go to the Mountain Division. El Paso has 64 points from 31 games. And then the West Coast, Phoenix has 66 points from 31 games. So they are 2 points behind us right now. What does that mean for the Rowdies with 1 game left this season? We can wrap up first place overall, guaranteed, with a win or a draw this weekend against Las Vegas. As we both said, we need to see a win because I think that this Las Vegas team is just so weak compared to the Rowdies that a draw or especially a loss would be something that would be, not catastrophic because it's obviously the end of the season, but I think that it would be a very bad omen. So, we can wrap up first place guaranteed with a win or draw. Let's just shoot for the win. And with that, there are 14 teams that have already qualified for the playoffs. There are only 2 spots left. So that's what we're looking at right now. And then that will take us into our last section here. There are 3 records, I should say, that we want to go over. We have hit 15 shutouts this past weekend against Loudoun United. You know who brought that up, Leo? It was actually Neil Collins on the press conference after the game. Jake Nutting, formerly of the Unused Substitutes and currently the PR and social media guy for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, he did not ask the question, and Neil Collins grilled him over it. I thought it was pretty funny, but Neil Collins also grilled me over one of my questions, so I got to hand it to him. He's pretty sharp about what his stats are and where the team is, but yeah, we have hit 15 shutouts, and we can beat that this weekend against Las Vegas, obviously. Max Lakawecki has also made his 100th USL regular season appearance against this past weekend against the Miami. So everybody, that is pretty cool for him. The other records that we have, Sebastian Gwenzotti has broken the single season record for the Rowdies. He is currently on 21 goals. Those 21 goals for him this season lead to 57 for the Rowdies overall, which means that he is 3 behind Georgi Hristov's 60 goals for the Rowdies. If he gets, if he got a hat trick this weekend, then he would be level going into the playoffs. But, let's not assume that anything like that might be going on. It might be a little pie in the sky. I don't know what you're thinking, Leo.
Honestly, I wouldn't put it past him. Putting a hat trick against Las Vegas Lights, something Sebastian Gwenzotti is more than capable of doing. Especially the kind of form we've seen him play at recently. But another thing that we should mention is that a new signing, Luis Fernando, was on the team sheet for the first time this season versus Loudoun United. Fortunately, he did not play, but it's a good sign for Rowdies fans too. Although it's very, very late in the season, we do have one more player who has not yet been seen by Rowdies fans. You never know, maybe he might get some minutes against Las Vegas Lights. But it's a really good, with Jan Ecker out, it's really good to know that another player that was injured finally coming back, finally has the opportunity to be seen by, not only to be seen by Rowdies fans, but also to play against, his new teammates. So it's a good sign for Luis Fernando. And hopefully we, James, you and I, especially you, James, because you'll be there at the game. Hopefully you'll be one of the first Rowdies fans to see him play in person for his new team.
I would certainly enjoy that. It would be very cool for him to get out there, not only for the team overall, but yes, for those couple of fans, myself included, I think that would be a very hallowed ground for us.
Yeah, exactly. And as we wrap up this episode, we just want to say, listeners, remember to check out the t-shirt that we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. T-shirt we collaborated on with Cathedral Clothing. There's a link to it in the description from wherever you listen to your podcast. And once again, all proceeds do go to the Play for More campaign that was started by Forrest Lasso. He made his $13 donation recently, not because of the shirts, but because of the amount of money he donates depending on his game performances. So make sure you check that out, and also check out our bonus episode from RBLR Rowdies here on RBLR Sports. I had the chance to sit down with Brian McLaughlin from the Rowdies Observer. He's also a sports writer who covers college football. And it was a really fun interview, really interesting as well to know the journey that Brian has done from his young days to where he's at now, all the experience he's learned in the sports writing business, and how he came to be a Rowdies fan and also write for the Rowdies on his blog, the Rowdies Observer. Really good stuff. We talk about basically the overall view of the Rowdies this season, the Rowdies last season, and what to expect moving on in the postseason. So make sure to check that out. Unfortunately, James wasn't able to be there, but even if he was, it would have been 2 times better. But yeah, make sure you check that out. And James, you want to say anything before we let people out of here?
I don't know if it would have been 3 times better with me on there, but I do want to say I thought you did an awesome job with the interview, and I thought that I learned a lot of really cool things about the guy. But if you do follow him on Twitter, then you'll see a good portion of the stuff that he talks about. Not all of it if you don't check out the blog, but you get even more of it from this episode. That's what I would say. You learn like a couple of other things that wouldn't have come across otherwise from either what he writes on Twitter or on the blog itself. But then you do go into that as well, and you get a lot of insight about the stuff that maybe you didn't read if you were on the blog, or if you weren't on the blog, I should say. So yeah, it covers so much ground, and I think that you had a really cool interview with a really cool guy in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. And hopefully the next interview we get on the show, you'll be there with me, James. But that's gonna do it for this. Exactly. That's gonna do it for this episode. And once again, thank you, listeners. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as we mentioned in the beginning of the episode. You can find us there at RBLR Sports. If you want to ever ask questions for the show, whether it's for the show that covers the Rowdies, the Rays, the Lightning, or the Bucks, all you have to do is use the hashtag AskRBLR, and you will get your questions heard during the shows. And if you ever want to interact with James and I on Twitter, you can find me there at _Leo Santos __. James, where can these people find you?
I am at RBLR James K.
There you have it. And yeah, as James mentioned before, we do not charge like $100 or $200 listening fee. It's totally free. We do it because we love doing it, and also we do it for listeners as well. But the easiest way you can support us is just by liking us and hitting that subscribe button to our podcast. You can find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and other major podcast platforms. Basically, wherever you listen to your podcast, we'll definitely be there. But that's gonna do it for this episode. And, as always, come on, you Rowdies. Let's go, Rowdies. Let's end the regular season on a high note, and let's prepare for the playoffs.
Let's go. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.